Hey there, all you cool cats and kittens. Let's take a little look at Retaking France as you watch a film that really does involve taking on the Nazis and winning World War II. So, just a little trivial pursuit question here that you may encounter is sometimes they'll ask you during the D-Day landings, which beaches did the Allies land at? And so there's Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. So I'll highlight those for you right here. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. If you're Canadian, you'll know that Juno Beach is where Canadians typically landed, and that had a little less fighting, or sorry, substantially less fighting than Omaha Beach, which is where the Americans landed. So if you've seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, that opening sequence of intense warfare is Omaha Beach. So a few of the shaping questions that have always really captivated me when I look at D-Day is number one, how did they keep this a secret? It was the largest amphibious invasion in world history. It starts out with about 175,000 men, ends up being 3 million men landing on those beaches as they go through and retake France and eventually move through Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. How do you keep that a secret? So, and then on the day of the attack, how did they keep it a surprise? In fact, there's stories where Nazis they went into the fortresses and they actually found breakfast, warm breakfast on the tables, which tells us that it must have been a surprise because you probably wouldn't be eating breakfast if you knew an invading force was coming. Um, if you'd like to watch a little film clip of Saving Private Ryan, there's one on my website as well as a little clip on how did they keep it a surprise if you want some more details on that. So typically I'll ask students, I'll say, if you were planning this battle, where would you invade? And typically students go, well, I'd probably invade right here if I was a commander. It's the smallest spot between these two areas. The invading force could get there quickly. In fact, from Pas-de-Calais over here, you can actually see the cliffs of Dover on a clear day if you look across, and that's where the Channel is built. So between Britain and France, there's an underground tunnel now to go back and forth. So that makes sense. But of course, the Nazis would have anticipated that. So they actually created a fake army led by General George S. Patton, because the Nazis believed he would lead the invasion, of tanks made out of rubber and men who were actually dummies. And they put them right up here so that the Nazi intelligence machine could see that. Right before the invasion, they actually had planes launch metallic chaff in this area, so it did look like an invasion was coming there because there was a bunch of radar lit up. But they did eventually invade over here in the beaches of Normandy. In the past, it actually invaded here at Dieppe just to try it out, but the beach was really rocky, and a lot of the tanks just got bogged down in those rocks as the treads spun. The tanks just sunk. They only sent between about 4,000 and 7,000 people. It wasn't a surprise, and the Germans quickly repelled that. So right here in Normandy is where that invasion eventually comes. So just a few details here, as often students will ask, well, what is D-Day? What does the D stand for? D actually doesn't stand for anything. It just means day. So technically it's Day Day. If you look for the operation in general, what it was called Operation Overlord. It's also called the Battle of Normandy, and some people refer to it as the longest day. The reason for the longest day is really the victory of the Allies rested on a knife edge. If they didn't win here, the chances are they could have lost World War II. So they referred to it as the longest day because it was one of the most important days in world history. It was one of the days that mattered most. So just to tell you a little bit about Hitler's preparations, because he knew the Allies would try to invade, um, he created Fortress Europa, or the Fortress Europe, and he put that in the hands of a very capable general, Rommel. And they did a number of things, if you look at these shores, to make them impenetrable. They had bunkers, mines, razor wire barriers, and sentries. Sentries are people that walk back and forth and keep a lookout to see if the invasion is coming. So you can see here, it'd be very hard to land boats on this area at low or high tide because there's all of these preparations on the beach to make sure that boats would have difficulty landing. And you can see that gravity was in the favor of the Germans and the Nazis because it's hard to run up these hills and it's heavily fortified. So we're going to look at those fortifications in more detail. If you look at this sort of cross section, it's like slicing an orange in half. You look at just how deadly and terrible these are. So first of all, gravity is at your advantage in two different spots. If you're the defender, so you're on a hill, so the enemy has to run up and they're exposed all the way here. and then all the way here as well, because you're looking down upon them. There's pillboxes, these heavily fortified bunkers with machine guns and other various weapons in them that can shoot at you. There's razor wire, which is particularly evil because barbed wire is meant to poke you and hurt you. Razor wire is meant to slash you. It's barbed wire with razors attached to it. And of course, there's concrete fortifications as well. As we look at the next page here, the Allied commander, just want to let you know, is a guy named Dwight D. Eisenhower. He has never heard a bullet fired in anger in his entire life. This is his first sort of major command in war. The size of the invading force is about 3 million men, but there's 175,000 on the first wave. I mentioned the Allied beaches already. So another thing they do is they drop men behind enemy lines with gliders, and they secure bridges and rivers so that as the Nazis do retreat, they can't destroy those things. So it makes it harder for the Allies and the engineering division in the Allied forces to continue that advance. It's an amphibious assault, which just means it's by water, and there's extensive aerial support. So very interestingly here, what the Allies are doing is they're using blitzkrieg tactics. They have gigantic weight in their force. They have surprise. They're dropping shock troops behind enemy lines, and they're just gonna nail the Nazis using what was the technique that was sort of pioneered by Hitler and the Nazi war. So if you want to watch Saving Private Ryan, that opening D-Day landing clip, in my research, I've been told that veterans had been notified, or sorry, had been brought on board to help the movie have authenticity. So if you want to see what the opening scene was like, it is one of the gold standards in Hollywood films for the D-Day landings. So at the end of the longest day, the Allies had actually secured the beaches, and eventually by August 1944, the Allies and Charles de Gaulle, who was the leader of the Free French, do march into Paris, and they seize it and take it over to a hero's welcome. The Allies did have mixed success. There was an operation called Operation Market Garden, where some airborne divisions were slaughtered by the Germans. And during the Battle of the Bulge, 200,000 German troops attacked a weak point. So as the Allies go forward, there's sort of always this like bulge. And so the Germans' attempt is to circumnavigate both those parts of the bulge, cut it off, and outflank those divisions. But they do lose as they are incredibly weakened, don't have much gas, morale is low, and it's sort of getting to the end of the war. And in December of 1944, the Germans were halted after some severe fighting. With little hope of winning the war, the Germans actually launched what were called V1 and V2 buzz bomb and guided missiles to terrorize the English countryside. And Hitler's goal was to say, look, we can launch a missile from Germany that can hit you guys, and we don't have any casualties whatsoever. And they were somewhat terrifying to know that there was this new weapon that could be launched from Germany, and basically you couldn't touch them. However, Germany's relying on their shale and coal reserves, and they don't have much gas or oil or rocket fuel, and so they're unable to continuously launch these rockets. By the very end, in 1945, April 1945, U.S. and Russian forces sort of meet in Berlin, and on April 30th, Hitler commits suicide. By May 2nd, Berlin fell to the Russians, and on May 7th, Germany surrendered. There's actually a second Führer for a little while that most people aren't aware of, and that's Admiral Dönitz of the Navy. Incredibly successful. He's the one that invents Rudo tactics in the Battle of the Atlantic in order to sink Allied shipping, and he basically almost breaks the back of the Allies several times as he destroys their shipping, which is keeping Britain going during the war, before the Enigma code machine, of course. And I always joke around, he's the policeman's favorite admiral, because his name sounds like the word donuts. So if you want some more trivia, we started with trivia, and with it, there was a second Führer, and his name was Karl Dönitz. So if you'd like to watch a video clip on my website, I also have a humorous one about Karl Dönitz taking over as the Allied commander. Thanks very much for your time. Have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed watching.